Okay, we are live. I am here to talk with you a little bit today about Tabletop Simulator and how we can wargame in a virtual space, how we can play miniature war games in a virtual space using a tool like Tabletop Simulator. It's not the only tool out there, and this is not the only video out there about Tabletop Simulator. And really, I'm just going to be focusing on one specific game today, To the Strongest. If you haven't heard of Tabletop Simulator, you don't know what it is a virtual table, a 3D engine that allows content creators to create games, pieces, implementations of their favorite physical games in a virtual space. You can find Tabletop Simulator here on Steam. It's like $20 or something like that. I think one of the interesting things about Steam is the workshop. I may have to come back and revisit the workshop at the tail of this video, but the workshop is where you find all of the content created for Tabletop Simulator, and much of it, most of it, 99% of it is free. There is a great implementation. There are two great implementations of the To the Strongest miniature wargame. Um, and I will link those in the show notes. I think that's probably the best thing to do, link those types of things in the show notes. So you can kind of see what Tabletop Simulator can do here in some of the graphics, some in this stream off of the Steam homepage for Tabletop Simulator. All right, that's that. So once you launch the app, you're presented with two options, join or create a game. I'm going to create a game here. I'm going to create a multiplayer game. Here you provide the name of your server, 7th Street. That's the locale of my original game club, and then a password for that server. Otherwise, you might just have any old folks jumping in and trying to crash your game. You can set the maximum number of players here, and creating that server will load up your game menu. And here, what we're going to look at is the workshop. The workshop holds all of the modules that we have downloaded, all of the modules that we have subscribed to in the Steam Workshop. When you subscribe to a module in the Steam Workshop, it automatically gets added to this library. And when you next launch Tabletop Simulator, you can get access to it. And you can see here in the workshop, there are very many different types of modules, and these are just a few that I've grabbed that look interesting to me. Um, so we're going to look at this latest To the Strongest module for War of the Roses by Anthony S. Out of England. Thank you very much, Anthony, for hello, Kitty, for creating this module. Let's take a quick look at it. I'm going to go ahead and load the module, and it'll take a little bit of time to load all the graphics associated with that module. I'm fairly sure those graphics are stored in a virtual space in a cloud server somewhere. Not too sure about all the technical details about module design, module storage, module whatnot. So here you'll see all the graphics have loaded, and we have a virtual table in a 3D space. So you can right click here and hold down the right mouse button and pan around the table. You can use the A, W, S, and D keys to move left, right, forward, and back. You can also use your arrow keys to do this. Oops, arrow keys looks like actually rotates the camera around a vertical axis, kind of like panning, but a little more fixed. AWSD to move around the table, mouse wheel to zoom in on the table. So here we can see all the great models that have been compiled and pulled together by Anthony S. For this game. Here we're looking at a War of the Roses, a medieval module. Just really stunning. A lot of hard work's gone into this module, and also inspired by the 1066 module, Dark Ages in England, which I will also link in the show notes. So how do we play to the strongest in this tabletop simulator? How do we play TTS on TTS? Uh, what's great about these modules is the designers have taken time to not only create the miniatures, create the bases for the tables, but they've also gone to great lengths to create army lists for each of these armies. Now, how do I see one of these armies? I can pick it up, I can grab it, I can move it around, but how do I look at it? I could maybe zoom in on it and see what's printed there on the card, but gosh, that's awfully hard to read. So the easiest way to read any content, to look at, inspect any content, is to mouse over it and hold the Alt key. That will pop up the object into the screen in front of you. I'm pretty sure that just works. Oh no, it works for miniatures as well. Um, so we can inspect any object on the table just by mousing over it and holding the Alt key. So great, we've got armies, we've got miniatures, we've got army lists, we've got um, victory medals, we've got a quick reference sheet. Excellent, we've got everything that we need to actually play a game. Oh, and we have a playing field. The playing field is for to the strongest is a gridded area, um, X by X number of columns. This is the standard playing size for to the strongest. I'm by no means an expert in those rules. I'm still kind of learning them, but having a lot of fun doing so. So uh, here we have Lancastrian armies on one side of the table, and on the opposite side of the table we have the Yorkists. You'll see that there are 5 armies for each. So certainly when you play, you could select any army that strikes your fancy, that you like the look of, that seems like it would be interesting or fun to play. But this War of the Roses module is set up for tournament play. There's a tournament that started at the beginning of September 2020. It's the second tournament that's been run on Tabletop Simulator for To the Strongest. The first being 1066 was a lot of fun too. So real casual play in terms of tournament organization. Players schedule games as and when they can. No requirements to play X number of games or even participate once you sign up. So you'll see here on the table there are a number of other assets. Oh, there's some playing card decks. Sure. There's these 3x5 note cards. Okay, sure. There's these smaller playing card decks. What's all this? Oh, these are terrain cards. Um, and then there's these bags. We'll talk about all of this stuff as we get going. I do want to point out that there are a couple of tools over here on the left-hand frame of the tabletop simulator, and you'll see this pretty much in all games, especially if you're the host of the game, if you're the one that created the server. There are a number of buttons here. The first one is grab, and the second one is line. I think these are probably the 2 most interesting tools that you will use during any tabletop simulator game. Grab is the tool that lets you pick things up and manipulate things on the table. And then this line tool also lets you kind of point at things. It can be used for measuring in tabletop games that don't use um, a gridded playing area like To the Strongest. But the best thing to know about these 2 tools is that you can switch back and forth between them by pressing F1 or F4. The other interesting thing is when you're on the line tool, you can also click the table and call to attention some detail that you want to share with your opponent. So here we are back at the grab tool. So when I'm setting up my To the Strongest game, I can follow the rules that are associated with battlefield selection. Oh, great. Here's the procedure to create a battlefield. And then I can follow these rules or this procedure about how to select an army. Um, and well, great. I know where the armies are. Now, where are these mysterious battlefields? You'll see each of these brown bags is labeled. When you mouse over an object into Tabletop Simulator, it will give you the label. So you can see there is battlefield here 1 through 10. So I might flip my card, draw a card right off the top of the deck, and use the F key to flip it over. I got a 2, so battlefield 2. All right, let's grab battlefield 2. So I just click and drag out of this bag, and a predefined, pre-generated battlefield is drawn right out of that bag. So as the host, as the creator of the table, what I want to do is grab that terrain out of the bag, throw it onto the table. Now we have our gridded playing area complete with terrain. Well, okay, that's great. Is this thing going to move around? Is it going to get bumped? Is it going to get manipulated somehow when we're playing? Oh no, what's going on here? Um, when any object in Tabletop Simulator can be locked to the table. It can be locked to the table by just mousing over that object and selecting and pressing the L key. Now, no matter what I do here to this battlefield, it can't be moved, can't be bumped, it can't be knocked around. So that's super helpful for terrain. It's also helpful in a few other instances, as you might imagine. But here we have our first battlefield laid out on Tabletop Simulator for War of the Roses, Blore Heath. From what I understand, all of these maps in this module are related or linked to historical battle from War of the Roses. Okay, good. So I've got my battlefield. Why don't I go ahead and choose an army? I'll just flip a card here and oh, I got 9. Oh, let's see. And I'll play Lancastrian. I'll just say I'm taking the 9th Lancastrian army. Wait, there aren't 9 Lancastrian armies. Oh, 9 is Army 5. So I can just go over here to Army 5 and draw a selection of box around the whole thing, grab it. Hey, I forgot something. Grab the whole thing. There it is. It's all highlighted. Drag it on over to my virtual table and plunk it down for deployment. All right, great. One of the really interesting things about Tabletop Simulator or these modules is that all of these assets, I may not need them all in play, so I can simply just select them and delete them. They're not gone forever. They're just gone from this instance of Tabletop Simulator. So, I can just select all this stuff I don't really need and get rid of it for a given game. Well, there we go. We've gotten rid of a lot of stuff. Hey, why can't I select this stuff over here and get rid of it? That's because these objects are locked. That's their default state when the module author created them. But I can simply unlock them and move them around on the tabletop also. So if I wanted to, I could unlock these objects, mouse over them, push the L key to unlock them, push the L key to relock them, or delete them as needed. So there we go. So you can see I'm kind of manipulating some of these cards and some things are going on with them. So when I manipulate cards, I just click and drag off the top of the deck to draw a card. I can draw many cards. When I mouse over the card, I hit the F key to flip it. These are common commands for most things. Like I could grab one of these victory medals and flip it. I could grab one of these miniature stands and flip it. Right. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about cards, how to use them. Oh, and how do I get all those cards back onto the deck? Especially useful for To the Strongest, where we're going to draw cards and shuffle decks and things like that. Well, I could grab them all, put them back on top, or I could right click and hit reset. Reset will pull all the cards from the table back into the deck and shuffle it for you. You can also shuffle the deck by mousing over it and hitting the R key a few times, and that'll shuffle the deck. Um, and then one other trick about cards is sometimes what will happen is when we're playing, especially with the regular playing decks and throwing many cards out on the table, sometimes they'll get stacked like this. And what's happening here is Tabletop Simulator thinks we're trying to create a new deck so that when I go back and hit reset, it doesn't call those cards automatically back. So if this happens to you during your game, don't worry. Just drag the cards back off of here, flip them over, and manually place them back into the deck and give it a shuffle. Alrighty, let's see. Same principles work for regular playing, the regular deck of 80 cards. Throw cards off, flip them over, recall them, reset the deck to recall all your cards and shuffle them. Right, let's look a little bit at the miniatures, at these gorgeous miniatures and stands. um, uh, Armies in To the Strongest or organized by command. In this, looks like this army has 3 commands, red, blue, and yellow. Each stand in the army will have a button or a bead on it that associates what command it is. And when you mouse over these units, you'll get a little text description, um, uh, what their classification is, what their save is, if they have any special equipment. And these dice that are on the stands relate to ammo. So in To the Strongest, ammunition is limited. As you shoot it, you consume it. You can just simply mouse over any of these D6s and set the rotation value of that D6. But as a quick solution, you can also mouse over this D6 and push a number on your keypad, and it will change the face of that die. Now here's kind of an interesting trick. We don't use it in To the Strongest, but you can also roll dice by hitting the R button, and it will physically roll that die for you and generate a result. That's kind of cool. Useful in other games, but not too much in To the Strongest. Um, these are heroes here on the silver bases and in the plate armor. You have a camp in To the Strongest army. Camp has additional ammunition, and of course our army list. So if we took a quick look at the army list with the Alt key, we could see all the details associated with that army, the red command, the blue command, and the yellow command. There are also details here about scouting points, which is useful for setup, and victory points for the stands and whatnot. Also, uh, starting ammo values, so in case maybe you knocked over a stand or lost the die or couldn't remember how much ammo the unit started with, you can check here on the army list and find that. All right, so that is the basic army. So now we're just going to look at kind of manipulating some of um, these playing pieces and talk a little bit about how a few of the basic actions might work. Thank you. My wife just brought me a cup of tea. Thank you. We could look at some of the basic actions, right? Basic actions associated with gameplay in To the Strongest. All right. So before I do that, I do want to talk about a couple of buttons that are here at the top of the screen. as a host, all of these buttons will be available to you. If you join a game as a participant or as a player on somebody else's server, right? They created the game, they loaded the module, they invited you to play. Um, you may not see all of these buttons, but don't worry, you'll see most of them. And when you join a tabletop simulator session, uh, once you load all those graphics, you will likely see a colored button, a colored circle kind of flashing in the center of the screen. And it will probably be green for the To the Strongest module. And as a player, you just simply click that, and that assigns you a side on the table. In this module, there are two sides. There's the white side, which is the default side for the host, and the green side, which is the default side uh, for the opponent. There is also a gray circle, which is a spectator option, and you can also click your name here and change your color, right? So maybe I didn't want to play the white side of the table once we did deployment. Maybe I wanted to play green, or maybe you find some way with your opponent to choose sides. You can do that again by clicking here on your name and saying change color. Here you can see the green circle, the green and the white circle that I was talking about, and the gray circles. Participants are just, sorry, gray circles are observer roles. That means that um, they don't get a chance to touch or manipulate any of the pieces. And it looks like there's also a game master role who can see all the sides. That's only shown to the host, from what I understand. So I'll go ahead and choose white, going back to my side of the table here. And you can see we can zoom very far out, or we can zoom very far in, again using the mouse wheel to do that. And the right mouse button to kind of zoom out. Sorry, the right mouse button to pan the camera around. Okay, so I was talking about buttons. I was talking about buttons here at the top of the screen. What buttons do I really care about? Well, the first button you might care about is the lift height. Now, um, lift height determines how high the object is picked up when you click and grab it. Left mouse button and hold will pick up an object. And you can see it doesn't move very high off the table. I'm going to talk about another trick in a moment, but if you mouse here to the lift height, you get a slider where you can choose how high that object is going to be picked up. And what's interesting is when the object gets lifted higher, it creates a shadow, which can be useful for placing a stand in the box. Awesome. Okay, so that's lift height. Usually I set it about midway. There we go. So again, the shadow's kind of helpful as a visual indicator about where this thing is going to fall onto the table. The other thing I like to adjust is the rotation degrees. So when I pick something up, this piece is not facing the right way, or maybe I want it to have it march towards me instead of to my right. So when I pick an object up, or when I even mouse over an object, I can hit the Q or the R key and rotate that object around its central axis. Now that's super cool and super helpful, but because To the Strongest is played on a grid, it's more helpful to adjust that rotation to 90 degrees so that when I rotate that object, it goes immediately to the box edge. the face, the side of a box edge. Cuts down on the amount of clicking that you might have to do, maybe speeds up play a little bit for you and your opponent. But again, Q or R to rotate a piece. No, Q or E, not R. R is roll or shuffle. Okay, so that is rotation degrees and lift height. The other thing I want to talk about is physics. So physics is the detail is the setting about how these assets on the table behave with one another. And when Tabletop Simulator initially loads, you'll have full physics on. And that means that objects will, when they touch one another, they'll do things like this. They'll fall over, they'll get jostled, they'll bump into one another. It's a bit of a hassle, right? You'll lose your ammo die, and it's like, oh shoot, I can't remember what my ammo was. It's a good thing I know it was starting at a 6, but what if I've shot a few rounds, or I've shot a few volleys? Now what do I do? Oh God, I got to get this die back on here. How am I going to do that? Oh wait, that's not exactly where it should be. Use the shadow. So how do we fix that, right? How do we stabilize the playing space so that objects don't interact with each other quite as much? So we go to the physics setting. This is a host setting in options. Choose physics and choose semi or locked. I kind of prefer locked just because a whole lot less happens to the pieces. Remember when I put these pieces on here, they were behaving a whole lot differently. In any case, trust me, folks, you want to do something like locked uh, physics settings just to make your gameplay a little bit easier. All right, so I think those are the 3 things I really wanted to talk about here in the buttons at the top. The rotation, the lift height, and the physics setting. Again, physics locked. You can also play with the gravity and things like that. But play around with these things, find the thing that works for you. But there is a configuration here which will change how your game pieces behave with one another. All right. So I've got this whole army out here. I need to set it up for deployment. I'm not going to go through a whole deployment, but I do want to show you that you can do that same thing, that same rotation thing that we were talking about earlier with the selection box. Whoops. All right, let's get these things back under control. So again, an army has commands. You'll deploy those commands as you would on per the rules for to the strongest. And I'm just going to show you real quickly how we can deploy a couple of a command for to the strongest. Here we have our general. And this happens a lot with generals. Sometimes they don't necessarily fit on the back of the stand. You could certainly stand them right on top. You can certainly try to stand them right behind. And when you pick this whole thing up, if you have physics locked, they'll all move together. You could draw a selection box around them and move them at the same time. But let's bring them back to the starting position. So we'll bring these 4 stands up here to this area before the river, for the stream. So into the straw, let's get a couple of Lancastrians to do something with. These guys will do. Oh, that's plenty. Facing the wrong way. Goofed up my lance. That's probably a bad spot for those cav. We'll put them here. All right, so this could be like our, our part of our engagement in our larger War of the Roses battle. And let's just grab this deck of cards and we'll bring it over a little bit closer so that we can use it during play. Alrighty, so remember the playing cards are you just click and drag them off the deck, drag them back onto the deck to place them on the top. You can mouse over and hit the R key to shuffle that deck. And the principle that's used in the tournament, or I think that's used in England when playing, or maybe it's part of the canon rules, is that when giving an order, I'm going to order these Welsh spearmen to slide, to step out to their right. So I would draw a card off the top of the deck and I'd place it in the box that they were going to move to, and I would flip it. Oh, 6, okay, that's not too bad. I only needed a 3, difficult maneuver, to slide them out. And now they're prepared to receive that cavalry charge. Maybe I want to pin them in place. I'm going to advance these spears so I can pin that cav in place with my zone of control. Ace. That would be command done, right? So I simply right-click and reset the deck. Draws all the cards back into the deck, and I can shuffle that a few more times if I like. We'll just, for the sake of argument, we'll still assume that it is the Lancastrian turn. They hadn't failed a command. And now the general's going to take an activation. We're going to have those archers shoot. They're going to shoot those Continental handgunners to their front right. We draw a card and give it a flip. That's a successful activation. Now good ordered archers in the open can fire 2 ammunition points, so I just bump that down to 4, mousing over the die again and hitting the number that I want on the keypad. Draw my 2 cards and flip them over. 2 misses, of course. That's about the way shooting goes for me. So remember that in the strongest melee and shooting cards we play in our back edge of our base edge of the playing field, playing area, and command cards we play into the box or near the unit, into the box where the unit's maneuvering, or adjacent to the unit if they're shooting. All right, so let's go ahead and give an order to the general to change places. I think that's going to need to be on a 10. Missed it, but the general has an ability that he can redraw a failed activation. So what I like to do is simply just rotate the card that he's redrawing for so I know it's been used, and flip that again. No luck for the general. So I hope I haven't talked too much. I wanted to provide sort of a comprehensive overview about how To the Strongest works on Tabletop Simulator, and maybe get you interested in playing some games or checking out these great modules with some friends of your own. Heck, join us for the tournament if you like. I would say I'm a rank amateur, but I learned a lot playing the 1066 tournament, and looking forward to even more games in this War of the Roses. There is a rumor of Italian Wars in a future tournament, which would be just great. Um, I guess that's everything to say about To the Strongest on Tabletop Simulator, TTS on TTS. All right, folks, take care.